Hello, this is Kathleen from the World Economic Federation. Today we are discussing further the value of the energy credit, this time from the standpoint of upward value and inflation on the basis level. Basis level, in this instance, refers to the $1 that is held in the bank for each energy credit in circulation. While, in our opinion, the energy credit system can manage inflation for itself better than the central banking system, if a fiat currency is going to operate as the basis for an energy credit, the Federation needs to have a mechanism to help manage the inflation on the fiat value basis without the need for taxation. At the same time, this approach allows governments, if they choose, to participate in order to reduce their respective federal debts without the need to use taxation to fund government or to give taxpayer-funded handouts to the fossil fuel industry. This will allow democracies that want to serve their voters to switch from the financial system of today, which answers to those who have voting control over the banking system, to a financial system that answers to the oversight of Federation voters through the auditor elections. First, let's talk about addressing the potential for a speculative value in a time where the energy credit is potentially scarce in the early stages. In a fiat currency, it would have the value based on the combination of the economy and advantages of the issuing authority and its perceived stability. By contrast, cryptocurrencies traditionally are more based on an artificial limit to give the false perception of scarcity, since, after all, something rare and useless is still useless by definition unless you can find someone to buy it from you for more than you paid. This claim of scarcity is only made more absurd by the fact that these digital tokens can be subdivided, making their theoretical circulation limit a meaningless number, as the only thing that has value is the real currency the buyer has to pay to acquire whatever the token is for. This is why cryptocurrencies have the reputation for being Ponzi schemes. Their proof of work, as it is referred to, is not actual work product, but the consumption of energy that could have been put to use powering something necessary, but instead got wasted, consuming energy to have computers do math that did not need doing. In other words, traditional cryptocurrencies have no value. They just represent the waste of the alleged work and a dependency on finding someone who is interested in speculating on future value to make up for the fact that the first purchaser overpaid for a token that shows someone wasted a whole lot of energy to run computer servers that do not create meaningful work product. Having no objective value makes traditional approaches to cryptocurrencies both predatory and hyper-speculative. Even if you can look past the wasteful consumption of energy that is reactivating coal-fired plants to pump out encrypted tokens, the volatility of the alleged currency makes them pretty useless as a currency. In order for currency to be useful, it cannot move around wildly in value. Or you could pick up your jug of milk at the back of the store, knowing you have enough money, but by the time you reach the front of the line, the value might have crashed. Or maybe the value skyrockets right after you spent it. This means that pure cryptocurrencies are not so much currencies as they are the abstraction of the concepts of a commodity applied to encryption. Because of this, the people who can make the most in crypto are the whales, who can manipulate the market to their advantage at the expense of the smaller traders. They are allowed to do this in part because of that volatility. The economic vulnerability can force the smaller crypto holders to sell their tokens. One cannot help but think that if banks were to have exchanges, and it was generally understood that the cutoff is at the buy-down threshold, that would mean that energy credits could be produced by having excess demand beyond that point. This is because if demand gets too high, it becomes too volatile and speculative, and an energy credit may begin to behave as typical cryptos do. Real currencies are stable and reliable in value. We do not want people driving up the value. The buy-down threshold allows the introduction of energy credits at a certain market price that includes a value in green energy investment to be owned by the system to stabilize the value downward and meet demand. This only comes into effect when that point is reached and zero independently held energy credits are available to meet excess demand. To a degree authorized by the Executive Committee and the government, this could be used to recover and exceed any revenue and profit reduction they may suffer in the early stages due to reduction of business with the fossil fuel industry, effectively paying their investors to put the fossil fuel industry out of business, if they are into that profit kind of thing anyway. By the social agreement that the buy-down is the value, that also maximizes the UBI value while funding its expansion to bring new people on. So, while the $1 sitting in the bank means that the energy credit will always have a floor value of at least $1, one also needs to create a ceiling value to prevent speculation and manipulation. This is where the buy-down level comes into play. The buy-down level is one of the levers available to the Executive Committee to maintain a stable and functional energy credit value through the system. The buy-down point would start at $2 and is tied into the exchanges. The buy-down level allows the creation of energy credits through a fiat transaction, as long as every second energy credit created gets reinvested into green infrastructure sponsorships, and there is no inventory at that price or lower on the exchange. This allows excess demand for credits to not drive runaway value to be speculated on, but redirects that demand toward building green infrastructure to meet the demand while maintaining a more stable transactional value. The catch is, if you invest a bunch of fiat currency into the economy to build billions or even trillions in infrastructure jobs, corporations might just start hiking up their prices to drive inflation due to excess monetary supply, since our leaders are against taxing people that can afford to give generously to their campaigns. That leads to the question of how to maintain a stable fiat value that underlies the energy credit value. The answer, of course, is to remove fiat currency, and this is where the exchange rate can be a significant force multiplier in the fight against inflation and the climate crisis. If you have watched our videos on how to eliminate taxation, you will recall that when someone, be it a nation or individual, purchases a sponsorship, they get energy reserve credits in an appropriate amount, which will eventually mature into full, fiat-backed energy credits once its number comes up and energy is sold to populate its basis value in the bank. At that point, the government can turn around and sell energy credits at the market value in exchange for fiat currency in equal value. This allows the dollar value to be removed from circulation, while replacing those dollars with an energy credit that can then be cleaned up later from circulation by the Energy Credit Clean Energy Discount Program, which gives people a discount on appropriate goods and services provided by the Federation that are specific to transactions that are paid in energy credits. That means that people and companies have incentive to trade in their fossil fuel fiat currency for an energy credit that has an equal general value, but has a higher value on specific types of purchases, like electricity, thanks to the subsidy incentive. By the government being able to exchange their energy credits with their public for their fiat currency, they can remove their circulating currency without the need to diminish their citizens' pocketbook value. This is why it may end up more advantageous in the event of a full elimination of taxes and national integration approach to simply set a permanent relative value between the fiat currency and the energy credit. To better explain, let's peg the energy credit to its minimal buy-down threshold of $2 to 1 energy credit. Since the currencies are fixed and inflation managed, there would not be as much need for exchanges because the energy credit, being a functional currency, means why would you need to exchange it for anything other than the goods and services you are paying for? This means that the exchanges would be more the realm of governments and corporations trading. The governments for decirculation, and the corporations for the energy credits to take advantage of the business programs and services discounts associated with energy credits. Very few private citizens would have such high energy credit demand for services, but they may want to do it just to decirculate the fiat currency. So in this example, the consumer can turn in $2 for one energy credit worth a fixed $2. This eliminates $2 from circulation, and the energy credits use their own mechanism to exit the economy, as covered in the energy credit inflation video. This could allow the Federal Reserve to be able to stimulate the economy now, knowing that with the maturation of the Federation, the Federal Reserve will have the means to remove money from circulation without the need for taxes, because the federal sale of matured energy credits gives the Fed the opportunity to buy back fiat dollars for their mature energy credits. This too could be applied to Biden's use of the trillion-dollar coin to avoid default. While the energy credit inflation management system covered in the previous video comes in behind to stabilize inflation at the energy credit end. If the government spends, they just need to recollect their currency by trading energy credits to their citizens to decirculate their currency. This means they could operate tax-free because they can sustain the government by selling their energy credits for that standard $2 rate or market rate, depending on the decision of the U.S. government, should they choose to eliminate taxes and pay off federal debt. If they do not choose to participate, the same mechanics can still be applied, but from the executive committee side. This means that the system could stabilize their currency to the dollar by participating in the same mechanic. After all, the participating countries' early holdings would be in the U.S., meaning their energy credits are secured by U.S. dollars and their fiat currency is secured by energy credits through the repurchase on their exchange. This would build a truly equitable currency basis with an international UBI and healthcare system that could manage the climate crisis, and by doing so, eliminate international debt to the central bank. The fiat guarantors will need their money back eventually. We collect it through the energy credit system, and we sell it back for you. We give the working class leverage. The advantage of starting in the U.S. is that, given how corrupt the U.S. government is with their legalization of bribery, which they rebranded as free speech for corporations, this would deprive the fossil fuel industry of their strongest international economic ally and enabler. When engaged in asymmetrical warfare, it is important to attack supply lines. In the context of international markets, that means depriving the fossil fuel industry of access to money by allowing the participating nations to achieve their own energy independence that is respectful of the will of their voters, and not beholden to the oligarchs who work against the voters' interests. We are a macroeconomic, green energy-based financial product. You are not the customer. You are acting as your own government's fiat guarantors. Your labor creates value, not fiat dollars. That is why this is a free service to the people receiving the UBI. In the words of Dr. Carl Widerquist, whom we interviewed in the last video, the UBI is the power to say no to an inadequate employment offer, creating a freer labor market. Whether the governments participate or not, they need their currency back, and we can sell that currency back for energy credits, of course, meaning they would need to tax your UBI just so they can prop up the fossil fuel industry and buy their fiat currency back. If you ask us, it seems a little petty to put the federal government into default just to prop up the fossil fuel industry with your tax dollars while inflation ruins lives. That is why we propose green energy-based economics, with blockchain components added because not everyone trusts governments. If you want to keep the energy credits privately in the bank and use your card, that works too. That's how we minimize energy consumption. People that don't want to use blockchain use the banking system. But either way, unless you choose to purchase personally held sponsorships that you can transfer to your kin or leave in your estate, the UBI components, the healthcare components, all of that, that's our service to the governments. Republicans say they want to privatize everything, and that's what is happening in their minds if the government defaults. At this point, the government is essentially heading into default to avoid the green transition because it refuses to work for you and expects you to work for less than a living wage. Sell off government lands to avoid default, they will say. Sell it to whom? Well, the energy companies, of course, national security and all that. What will they sell off next after having sold you and everyone else out? All that makes a stark contrast with our combination of mechanics, which allows the energy credit system to address fiat-based inflation as well as its own inflation, without the need to deprive people of their value earned through economic participation. Let's put an end to waiting on Washington. Failing that, this is our notice that should the government intentionally default, as the House of Representatives currently intends, we will be switching our basis currency based on who answers the phone first. Frankly, any currency would be a better choice than a nation that defaults the global economy to avoid societal progress. Every energy credit returns its value in fiat currency to the issuing government on exchange, stabilizing its host fiat basis, something that the fossil fuel oligarchs who refuse to pay taxes are not willing to do. The fiat currency is arbitrary. The true value of the system is in economic production. While we have intended for the fiat basis currency to be the dollar, this is based on creating a system that provides a stable currency. However, there is no economic mechanic that can counter the devaluation of a currency via intentional default. Fiat value is arbitrary. The value of the Federation energy production is not. Therefore, we will use a basis fiat currency that does not depend upon the result of a game of chicken in the halls of government. On the other hand, if Biden chose to take an emergency national defense measure and use the trillion-dollar coin as a global poverty reparations program and green energy repayment system, half could go to pay down debt, half towards Federation services. With welcome, specific regulations, it would stimulate the economy greatly. Further, the U.S. government would get double energy reserve credits of the full amount. With that, if the government chose to fix the price of the buy-down at $2, they would get 2 trillion energy reserve credits to balance the books, in addition to the $500 billion paydown. Then, when their ERC mature from the associated second credit energy sponsorship pools, they will get a $4 trillion return, meaning a $3 trillion fiat profit in decirculation, plus the $500 billion initial down payment, or whatever Biden chooses to pay now, with the rest coming as people exchange their fiat dollars for mature energy credits. It seems like it would be hard to argue in court that we should allow the Republican sabotage when we can simply evade the problem by paying down the debt by $3.5 trillion at the end. It just seems like something Biden might like to point to: addressing the climate crisis, paying down student debt, making healthcare affordable and then free, empowering the international labor groups to organize, making green energy affordable, creating a UBI, and fully funding the constitutionally mandated Postal Service. He could make all this his 2024 pitch, having already done it. The US dollar is the international reserve currency. It is absolutely a matter of national security to pay the debts of the US. And if pro-fossil fuel oligarchs wish to sabotage the economy to create anger and division to undermine democracy, extreme measures are justified. Biden might even be able to woo a significant number of Republicans by promising to cut many federal programs once the Federation programs move in to replace them with adequate funding, if the Republicans sign on to keep their promise to end taxation. By keeping the energy credit constrained between its base value, the dollar, or whatever alternative fiat currency we must use, and its maximum value, determined by the buy-down mechanism, the Federation system ensures that the energy credit can function as a stable currency that will not attract speculators in the way cryptocurrencies do today, and won't drive inflation as fiat does today, all because Federation members made capitalism pay to not default. If you share this vision of not defaulting to Republican incompetence, please tell the White House by liking, sharing, and emailing this message to any leader you think is competent enough not to be in the pocket of the pro-tax fossil fuel lobbying industry. We await and welcome regulatory terms to address the climate crisis by ending taxation on Dark Brandon's watch. Or we could lose our status as a global reserve currency as a nation. Peace is security, and economic justice leads to peace. America's credit is built on American labor, not political culture wars and empty promises. You, the workers of America, have been building America's credit for over 200 years. It is not the Republicans to destroy. We aim to drink the fossil fuel industry's milkshake and turn the profits into a UBI at no cost to you. It is the green energy profits that will set you free.